Have you ever felt like your business is doing great work, but the world just doesn't seem to notice? You're posting on social, running ads, maybe even working with influencers, but you're still stuck in obscurity. What if there was a proven way to get real media coverage, the kind that builds lasting credibility and puts your name next to trusted national brands? Welcome back to another episode of the Vital Wealth Strategies podcast. I'm your host, Patrick Lonergan, and today we're diving into one of the most overlooked yet powerful tools for entrepreneurs who want to stand out in a noisy marketplace: public relations. My guest is Mickie Kennedy, founder of eReleases, a company that's helped thousands of small businesses and authors break into national media without the massive PR budgets of big corporations. Mickie shares how he went from faxing press releases one by one to helping clients land coverage in places like the Wall Street Journal, Forbes, and Good Morning America. In this episode, you'll learn why earned media, not ads or algorithms, might be the fastest way to build authority, trust, and visibility in your industry. You'll hear real examples of small companies who turned one great story into millions of sales, and how to start crafting your own PR strategy that attracts attention for all the right reasons. If you've ever wondered how to get your business noticed, not just seen, but trusted, this conversation will open your eyes to what's truly possible. And when you're ready to start building out your own winning strategy, visit vitalstrategies.com/tax. That's vitalstrategies.com/tax, where you'll find practical tools and guidance to take control of your financial future and position your business for lasting success. Before we dive in, if this episode brings you value, I'd love for you to take a minute to leave a review. It helps us reach more entrepreneurs like you who are ready to elevate their wealth, credibility, and impact. All right, let's get into it. Here's my conversation with Mickie Kennedy. Welcome. Thank you for joining us here today. Today on the podcast, we've got Mickie Kennedy. We're going to be really digging into media and PR and how to break into that. It feels like it's absolutely a challenge. And so thank you, Mickie, so much for joining us here today.
Oh, you're very welcome.
So I see the problem that the entrepreneur has is they don't know how to break into media. They try social media, they try ads, they do influencer campaigns, but it doesn't build lasting credibility. Traditional PR feels expensive and really out of reach for a lot of people. And then there's also just this frustration, like, hey, we're providing a ton of value, we feel overlooked. Their business deserves more attention, but sort of stuck in an obscurity. And they wonder, like, will you ever get heard? And then finally, I think about the entrepreneur with a meaningful business should have access to PR strategies that work, not just massive corporations with huge PR budgets. So I'm looking forward to resolving all of these issues that are out there for the entrepreneur. And Mickie, can you tell us just a little bit of your background, how you got started with eReleases and helping support the entrepreneur and author to crack those issues we were talking about?
Yeah, it was a very non-traditional foray into PR. I graduated about 30 years ago with a Master's of Fine Arts in Creative Writing with an emphasis in poetry. I had always waited tables undergrad and graduate school. Just figured I'd start doing that full time. And so I did that after I graduated. And at the end of that summer, I just felt like, I don't think I want to do this the rest of my life. Yeah, I'll be honest with you. What turns out to be 50, 60 hours on your feet, standing and working is taxing. And so I decided I was going to pivot to a safe office job. I started looking around. I got hired at a telecom research startup in DC. And I was employee 3, but because I had a writing background, I inherited the fax machine that was like brand new, state-of-the-art, $5,000 fax machine, and told to send out press releases. And the owner of the company, a telecom attorney, gave me a stack of press releases they previously sent out, and gave me a list of 150 fax numbers, and the fax machine only held 100. So it broke my heart to program it with 100 numbers and then have to hit delete and then send to another 50 people. But I was doing that continuously. And nothing happened when I sent out the press releases. And the owner said, yeah, nothing ever really does. But I hear people say that data is really important and we have all this data. So I think, eventually someone might pay attention. And I just felt like, ooh, that's the wrong answer. I spent a day and a half to send these releases because it takes a while to program numbers and hit send and wait for that
Hmm.
awful screech and the errors and all that. And so I made it my mission to figure out what I was doing wrong. And my press release looked like everybody else's, looked like what the owner was doing. And what I realized was that, a lot of press releases don't get picked up, they don't generate earned media. And in my research, I found out, yeah, the media does love data, but they need context for the data.
Hmm.
What's interesting here? Why is that interesting? And so we had just published our Caribbean telecom traffic to and from the US. And I remembered that there was one country that was an outlier. I can't recall what it was, but it wasn't like a country that you've really heard of in the Caribbean. And so I asked the research analyst there, there's just three of us, why is this number so huge? It's bigger than all the other countries there. And they go, oh, that's where all 1-900 numbers are routed through there. They sort of act like the routing for 1-900 numbers. And for those who don't know, 30 years ago, 1-900 numbers were this thing that you would call, and they would usually disclose what the rate was because it was variable. You could call
Hmm.
and get a recorded horoscope for 50 cents a minute, and you press 7 for Virgo or whatever. You could call and speak to a live, psychic, or get pet
Hmm.
advice if you're having pet behavior problems. For that might be a bit more, $2, $3, $4 a minute. And there's this whole world of 1-900 numbers. And so I wrote a press release about that, mentioning the telecom traffic data and how it took this little island country out of obscurity, and now they were like a power
Hmm.
there for telecom traffic. And I faxed that out. That got picked up by the Financial Times, The Economist, The Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, Red Herring, and several telecom trade publications. And so the phones rang, orders poured in. It was a really fun time. And so I continued to try to look at the story behind the data that we had. I realized that journalists like to follow a story arc, even if it's
Hmm.
a small article. And so what I realized before is just giving data, there's no story arc there. There's nothing to get an audience excited, or to educate them or entertain them, because that's the journalist's job. It's like, I want to bring stuff to them that's going to delight them or educate them, or just give them information that they feel is very important. And what we were doing before with just, dumping the data wasn't really giving any clues as to what the story was.
Hmm.
And so I continued to do these more story based releases, and we continued to get good pickup. Probably none as good as that initial one, because that was hot during the time,
Yeah.
1-900 numbers. And so um, I just started to get more calls after I faxed saying, hey, could you start emailing these releases to us? And I'm like, oh, yes, please. And I remember being really excited when I got under 100 numbers. And so the
Hmm.
fax machine saved several hours of programming numbers because we were now
Hmm.
under 100 numbers. And I also had the idea of, like, I need to start building a Rolodex of journalists and their contact information and being able to email them. And so I would reach out to journalists on my time, mostly bulletin boards, which I don't think really exist anymore
Hmm.
now. But the internet was just kicking off, and things were exciting, and journalists were very willing to give you their email address, and I would say, I can send you releases on your beat and the topics you cover, and they're like,
Hmm.
yeah, you're not going to charge us. And I was like, no, I'm just going to send them on behalf of clients. And so
Yeah.
I spent about a year collecting email addresses, and when I launched in 1998, I had almost I think around 10,000 people signed up. I originally was going to be high tech, and I
Hmm.
would talk to journalists, and all of a sudden they'd be like, oh, today I'm now in fashion, or they were always moving beats. And I just said,
Sure.
I'm just going to collect everybody and not be specific to
Hmm.
just high tech. And I was a matchmaker. I would write releases or take releases on behalf of clients and send them
Hmm.
to journalists. There wasn't advertising then. This was pre Overture,
Yeah.
GoTo.com. And so I just was mostly on, I think Microsoft had a big community. I think it was Link Exchange. And There was a lot of people there looking for advice and how to promote themselves. And so I was always giving advice and telling people, what they could be doing and the services that I offered. And that was it. I ended up leaving the telecom business about a year or so after I'd started. I was doing that in the evenings and the mornings and doing my day job for a
Hmm.
while. And it just sort of grew from there. I just continued to provide a lot of education to people. And what happened over the years is email started to become very ineffective for reaching journalists. Media databases became commonplace, and people could license a media database for, anywhere from $5,000 to $20,000 a year. And so what would happen is you'd get a golf club company would pay $10,000. They would hit send with their mediocre press release that wasn't really,
Yeah.
there was no story there, and nothing would happen. And then they would go back and brainstorm and say, well, who likes to play golf? Bankers and finance people, Wall Street bros. And so
Yeah.
all of a sudden they would be emailing this press release about golf clubs to like financial analysts and banking people who have no uh, they will never cover golf clubs
Hmm.
in their beats. And so
Right.
their off-targeted press releases have just overwhelmed the inboxes of
Mm.
national media. Less so with local media, but it's still a thorn in their sides.
Yeah.
And so PR Newswire reached out to me around that time and said, "We like what you're doing. Would you consider adding wire distribution to your offering to your clients?" And I said, "Yes, I would." And today, for example, they charge over $1,700 to go out nationally, and they wanted to give me like a local distribution. And I really championed that. My clients are looking for national attention. They deserve it. These aren't
Hmm.
your customers or people that you would ever look for. And so what we decided was to make it worthwhile is all of my customers will get a national distribution over PR Newswire. So all of a sudden, I represent a larger chunk of money to them. And so they
Hmm.
were able to give me a really good discount. Today, all releases that go out through e-releases go out nationally over PR Newswire. You don't have to pay $1,700, probably
Yeah.
closer to a quarter or a third of
Yeah.
that. And you also get sent to the appropriate industries and trades and all of that good stuff. But it still isn't the magic sauce. It's telling a story that people care
Yeah.
about and that journalists want to turn into a story, to a quarter or a third of
Yeah.
that. And you also get sent to the appropriate industries and trades and all of that good stuff. But it still isn't the magic sauce. It's telling a story that people care
Yeah.
about and that journalists want to turn into a story.
Yeah, I've got so many questions. I'm going to ask a question here because I'm uninformed. Can you explain what the wire service is and how that works and how it's different than, I'll say, shooting out an email to
Sure. So,
a million people?
email was very commonplace. People that used the wire before that were largely publicly traded clients meeting SEC disclosure,
Mm.
where it would go to certain outlets, and you knew that you were safe. If you were publicly traded, you'd send over the wire. In the U.S., it's largely a duopoly. It's PR Newswire and Business Wire. Um, they're both quite large. They basically reach all the media. There's no need to go to both of them because it would just be duplicating
Yeah.
the send. But it's broadened now because of what's happened with email, that journalists are also over the last 20 years have seen the economies of the newspapers fall. Largely the classified ad industry, which was their bread and butter, has been destroyed by Craigslist and
Hmm.
Facebook Marketplace and everything. And unfortunately, a lot of newspapers have gone online only, or they've really changed their offerings. And
Hmm.
journalists who used to be able to write 2 or 3 stories a week, or now many of them are expected to write 2 or 3 stories a day in order to keep the machine going.
Right.
And the investigative journalism still takes place at the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal and Washington Post, but not at your local
Yeah.
newspapers as much anymore. And so that's been a big change. But because of that, and how ineffective email is becoming, the wire has become more important for people who are not publicly traded.
Hmm.
The great thing about the wire is it's very clean, it's monitored. You're not going to find golf clubs under banking or under
Yeah.
finance or anything like that there. And when a journalist logs in, they can actually customize the feed. So yeah,
Mhm.
I cover, banking, but maybe I don't cover these certain aspects. Like maybe I don't do international banking, or I'm not interested in other things. So you can
Sure.
actually create keywords to exclude or even to highlight releases that have keywords that you're really passionate about, to weight those more towards the top. And so when they log in and look, it's a very relevant feed for them. And
Mhm.
that's been really great for people who go out over the wire, because it makes it much more likely that you'll be considered, as opposed to just
Yeah.
blindly emailing an inbox that's just,
Yep.
so overwhelmed. A lot of PR firms used to do phone pitches as well as email pitches. And what I find is that a lot of the PR firms do the email pitches, but then they call and kind of walk the journalist through how to find that
Mhm.
actual email in their
Sure.
inbox if it's not been deleted or if it's already
Yeah.
been thrown in the spam.
Yeah. This is so good. So I want to talk a little bit. I'm going to give you my impression of the value of press release and getting picked up in a story on a national scale. So I think about the credibility that it lends. And I'm going to just give you an example. We get requests for people to be on our podcast all the time, and we do some diligence there. Like, is this fit, and how does this work? And it's so interesting when I see somebody that's got uh, been published in national publications. Like, I almost don't really care, right? Beyond that, I'm like, there's some credibility here that when I'm filtering through the list of people that we're looking at, it moves them up in the ranking significantly because, like, oh, people are interested in what this person has to say because they've made it into these publications. Um, so I want to start off and just like stop on that point and see if you have anything to add to that, or if there's anything I'm mistaken on, because I think the credibility trust factor goes up dramatically when you're uh, published in a publication that people are familiar with.
Yeah, because, when a journalist writes about a person or a company, there's a bit of due diligence they do as well. They
Mhm.
look, how long's this website been around? How long, what do we know about this person? They check their LinkedIn. Before they write an article about a business, they've done a bit of due diligence. And so people are very trusting of what they read in an article by a journalist. Where if it's an ad and it's ad copy, our eyes sort of glaze over. We distrust every word of it. But
Mhm.
when a journalist writes about something, it's almost like social proof or an implied
Mhm.
endorsement.
Yeah.
I can recall many times feeling very passionate about an article or a blog post about, somebody who saw a need for something and they tried to get the company that made sense to just make this product, and they didn't. And then all of a sudden they've got this Indiegogo or Kickstarter where they're trying to get it done and they're sharing their painful path. And all of a sudden you're like, I don't need this, but here's $35 to help this person, get this little
Mhm.
thing produced. And you feel really passionate about it. And that's what happens with, earned media. It's
Mhm.
completely different. I mean, if that was an ad, I don't think most people would back it. There is this emotional response we have because it is dealing with people. It's this human interest element. It's a signal of trust. And I
Mhm.
think that that's the real magic of it. And it still works really well in that capacity. I find that a lot of people, who are looking to, raise themselves as a thought leader, build some authority, often turn to PR.
Yeah.
And, I work with a lot of startups that appear on Shark Tank. The producers recommend that they do a press release before their episode airs. And
Mhm.
we get mentioned as having favorable responses with a lot of them. And so we've also done longer campaigns with like Squatty Potty and Manscaped and
Mhm.
stuff like that. And I see the startups really, the ones that usually have backing and money, pour a lot into a PR effort, and they build a base of all this credibility and these articles. And then they turn on the paid advertising. And I thought that was really
Mhm.
interesting that we would have these great customers for a year or so and then they would move on. And when I circle back with the marketing team, they're like, oh, we're just building a base PR. We might come back later with some occasional stuff when we've got big
Yeah.
announcements and things like that. But you know, with this base, we're probably saving 30 to 40% in ad revenue
Mm,
because our conversion rate is going to be much higher with all the little logos and links to
yeah.
articles. And when people sign up for our email that they haven't yet committed to buying, we put these articles in front of them and all of these great, positive third party boosts that we get. And so it really works extremely well. I also know from people who say that when they start getting media attention, that their churn rate goes down,
Mm,
and that makes sense because there's always people who either take over a role and they feel they have to like vet who we're working with,
yeah.
or they feel like it's been 3 or 4 years. We should consider other players out there and make sure we're with the right company. And a lot of times when they see these articles, they feel like, oh no, I feel confident that we're with a good
Hmm.
company. We don't need to look around. And so
Yeah.
all of these things really help a business and really establish you. There's always the huge success stories that I've worked with where
Sure.
one article, I did one for a guy who had never written a press release before. And he was an office admin at um, a waste management company that builds facilities for a city. They like build
Hmm.
both the waste management and the recycling thing, and they're just like a one-stop shop. They handle everything. They coordinate with all the different contractors needed. And I walked them through building a press release. They sent it out. They got picked up in Waste News magazine, which was a big deal for them.
Yeah.
And they were immediately contacted by a city in Australia and said, "Hey, do you do international?" And they said, "Oh yeah, we do India and a few other
Hmm.
places. We put them on barges and we send them over, and we work with local contractors and we find them and we get them going." And so they ended up building three facilities in Australia. I think it was over 30 or $40 million just from
Wow.
one $300 press release that
Yeah.
an office admin did who knew nothing about press releases.
That's fantastic. So I'm thinking of the media that this can get us in. We've talked a fair amount about articles and whatnot, but I assume these press releases could be picked up by uh, TV, radio, yeah, some larger players in those arenas too. Is that a fair
Yes,
assessment?
we.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of the consumer products that are sometimes a little wacky have done really well. We worked with somebody called Celebriducks that builds
Mm-hmm.
little rubber ducks in the using licensed celebrities or
Yeah.
figures in history like Shakespeare and stuff like that. And they've been on the Tonight Show. They've done Good Morning America.
Hmm.
All of these fun things. But yeah, TV, radio. There's blogs. There's also social media. There's a guy that I follow on TikTok called Snackalator, who each week does a roundup of new fast food offerings that are
Hmm.
coming, as well as stuff hitting grocery store shelves. And he said several times in his TikToks that he gets the images and finds out about these through press releases. And as soon as they hit, he's covering them using the
Hmm.
photos that they supply and putting them as the background as he talks through the various ones hitting grocery store shelves and things like that. And in fashion, there are a lot of Instagram influencers that I've seen, cover things and use images that came from the press releases. And there are people who believe that they have an in with that
Hmm.
fashion house. And many times it's no, the fashion house announced it Monday, and later Monday they're talking about this new,
Hmm.
bridal thing from Vera Wang that has just been released, and
Yeah.
it makes it seem like she's an insider, but she's just talking to her audience and pulling stuff from press releases. So it is evolving where we get it. And one of the
Hmm.
more exciting things is AI as search. I'm hearing from a lot of customers and return of older customers who are saying that they're seeing AI recommend companies based off of press releases. And I've looked into that a little bit. And it comes to AI weighs different content that's out there, but one
Hmm.
of the things is recency. And so if you've got a competitor who had an article written 3 years ago, but you've just done a press release where you're talking about how great you are in this industry, it's going to give more weight to you because you just did the release. Because I'm not even sure if this company from 3 years ago how active they are because they haven't been recognized recently with
Yeah.
any media or news. And so it's giving a lot of people an edge that they're coming up in AI searches because of press releases. The great thing about press releases is you wrote it, so you get to control what's written. I suspect AI is going to pivot at a certain point
Hmm.
and discount the press release in favor of an article. But currently, it's favoring a press release as if it is an article, and it's giving
Wow.
a lot of people an edge with AI search.
Wow. Yeah, this is so fascinating, and I love how you're mixing in PR into a larger marketing strategy, right? We start to see these things come into play with AI, ads, social media. I think this is really good. If you're ready to start getting the recognition your business deserves, not just from the media, but in your own bank account, then it's time to make sure your financial strategy is working as hard as your marketing strategy. At vitalstrategies.com/tax, we'll help you uncover powerful tax strategies that keep more of your hard-earned money in your business where it belongs. You've worked hard to build credibility and impact. Now, let's make sure you're keeping the wealth that comes with it. Visit vitalstrategies.com/tax today. Start building your plan for smarter taxes and bigger savings. So, when I think about putting out a press release, I assume it makes sense for me to be creating content in general, right? Like to have posts on my website, to have a podcast, to have you know different things out there. So I'm thinking of the credibility of you said the authors, or the writers for the articles are, the journalists are doing their research. And so if somebody looks me up, if I put out a press release, the likelihood of them connecting with me probably goes up dramatically if they're like, oh, there's a body of work here that really supports the story that they're telling through their press release. Do you see that as a true statement, or does that not really matter when it comes to getting picked up?
I think it does. I think that when someone is researching or looking into an entity and they see that this person has done a series of releases, there's been a little bit of pickup over time, it boosts the credibility. I remember my
Hmm.
daughter sent me once for Christmas that she wanted this product, and I couldn't find it anywhere except the website. And the website looked terrible. It looked like I am going to be the subject of credit card
Hmm.
fraud.
Yeah.
And it was like 20 years out of date. And I think it still had the flashing graphics and stuff. And I just cringed when I looked at it. But I noticed they had a newsroom, and I went and looked at it. And they've been doing press releases for 14 years. I was like, this is not a fly by night company that's going to steal my
Hmm.
credit card.
Right.
And so it relaxed me quite a bit. And I know something similar must happen with journalists. I mean, they're
Hmm.
human. They go to the website, they look around, you know, flags will go off initially when they look at how out of date and unprofessional it is. But then when they explore, there's a newsroom and they see that this company's been issuing releases for over a decade. There's a comfort level that this is an entity that's been around and will continue to be around. There
Hmm.
was a phenomenon early with the .com crash. Red Herring had a couple of black eyes where they had done companies profile on the cover that never officially launched, and they ended up being what they called vaporware at the time.
Hmm.
And there are journalists who still pay attention to that. Companies that announce amazing, wonderful things and they're not backed by giant companies. They're like, let's see if they launch first before we
Yeah.
write about them, and then we'll feel a little bit comfortable. And so I think that having a presence out there and feeding that presence gives you a credibility. I know it just seems like something that you don't think about, but when we're on a website, we look around. Journalists do the
Hmm.
same thing, and there's a comfort level knowing that you've written about yourself. And a journalist sometimes hunting a story will find other little nuggets and older press releases that they piece together and develop a story that may not be exactly what you launched in your most
Hmm.
recent press release, but it better fits what they cover and their industry.
Yeah, this is good. Now, I'm gonna make a marketing parallel and ask a question about this. So when I run an ad on Google, I have really good data around how that ad performed, the clicks, all of that other stuff. When I send out a PR release, right? How do I know the data around that? How do I know if that article, if there's an article written, like, is there a way to track that information?
I wish there was.
Hmm.
I hear from a lot of marketers that this is why they hate PR.
Mm.
It's hard to measure. I every time someone puts a tracking URL in a press release and they do get an article, the it's never respected. It
Hmm.
always just says the domain or what you
Yeah,
end up with on that
sure.
site. And there's also the fact that a lot of places never provide a link.
Hmm.
I am I know of one exception with the New York Times, and I'm glad that I got it. It's where a client had built like a huge resource page, and I guess it was so good that they did actually indicate the URL in print and on the
Hmm.
website. It wasn't clickable,
Yep.
but it was there, and so that's very rare. Google has a patent on these types of situations. They call it an implied link, where they can tell contextually from this article, you know, this is about e-releases. So therefore,
Mm-hmm.
we're going to give credit of this article in the New York Times to e-releases' website. And that happens all the time. I see people who are like, I don't understand. We got these great articles. Nobody linked to us, but our SEO's never been better. And I go back to that patent and show them that
Yeah.
that's exactly what's happening in those instances. And you will have. I tell people the best indicator is you get some media pickup, and then was there a change in the lead flow? Was there
Hmm.
a change in sales? Were there more calls coming in? I always tell people this is good practice with any business, with anything you do, but have on your contact form, how did you hear about us? And
Hmm.
don't just have the drop down that a lot of people do. Leave room for people to indicate,
Yeah.
I saw you on this site, or I
Yeah.
saw you on this specific page. Do the same thing with people who call in. Oh, by the way, how did you hear about us? And that's a really good indicator where people are coming from. And that being said, take these pickups as you get them, and make sure you share them with your existing lead flow, because that credibility and social
Hmm.
proof I've talked about. If you normally convert at say 12% of people that you capture their email address, you put these earned media articles in front of them and allow them to read them, ideally by clicking on the link and going to those third-party
Right.
sites. They're going to have that same sort of signal of trust, and
Yeah.
that 12% rate might go to 18, 22%. That is not unusual. Same thing with your existing customers. Share these positive wins that you get
Hmm.
in your newsletters, put them on your website, share them on all your social media. Really try to get that out there, because it really does make it so much easier for you to convert
Yeah.
and to keep and retain existing customers, as well as bring in new ones.
Yeah.
Um, you know, One of the tricks I tell people of, like, how do you know when you've got picked up? The sad thing is nobody really contacts you and says, "Hey, we just wrote
Hmm.
an article about you."
Hmm.
It happens rarely, but um, generally what happens is, used to be people would use clipping services. They cost
Hmm.
more than the PR campaign by far. So I tell people,
Yeah.
go to Google News and do a search, and you can customize the search to the date of your distribution of the
Hmm.
press release to today. And so anything that's in Google News that mentions, whatever you're searching, the company name, or it could
Yeah.
be a product, or maybe you did something around a person with a very unique name or something. You could do those types of searches within that date parameter, and
Yeah.
anything that shows up likely was influenced by that press
Hmm.
release. But also do the same thing in Google Web, also with the
Yeah.
dates. And people are like, why Google Web? This is news. Well, there is about a third of the news outlets have opted out of Google News.
Hmm.
For whatever reason, they feel that Google News is stealing their data and giving enough of a abstract that people aren't clicking through the articles, but they're still in Google Web. And
Hmm.
so if you go there, you can find additional articles in Google Web of people who've opted out. There's
Yeah.
also people behind paywalls that you probably just aren't going to be able to get through that. But
Hmm.
I find that if you do the trick with the date parameters in Google Web and Google News, it probably picks up 80% of what
Yeah.
is out there without paying $2,000, $3,000 a month for a clipping service.
Sure. Yeah, I know that makes a lot of sense. And I was also thinking about, like, I've got Noodle, Google notifications set up for, you know, my name, business names, that type of thing that flow into my inbox. And I imagine that could be an interesting way to keep track of some of those things too. Like if I start getting mentioned in articles that I'm
Yeah.
not, proactively involved in, it's going to tie back. So,
I also like
um,
to use the Google News alerts for competitors. And
mm,
so maybe you have keywords in your industry you could put in there. Also, if you go to a conference and you notice, like, let's say you're a regional company and you're only interested in Northeast, go
mhm,
collect people who are killing it and growing like crazy in the Southwest and Southeast and get their cards and put their names in as keywords. And every time you see articles around them, you're like, could I somehow make an article for my company and my market that's using this? Because obviously
mhm,
this delighted a journalist enough that they wrote about this
yeah,
subject matter, and that could be a subject matter that you could apply to you. It's not always going to work, but I find that that works really well, especially if you're
mhm,
more of a local or regional thing, because if it's a national company and you're a national company, it's a little bit harder to replicate the exact angle that they did and have it work. But
yeah,
if you're a local business or a regional business, I find that works really well. Collect a lot of business cards of companies like you when you go to trade shows and conferences, and just plug them
mhm,
into a Google alert and see which ones get pickup coverage. And could you
yeah.
build something like that locally?
Yeah, that's great. So I want to circle back to one of the things you talked about was story, and I think that's so important. And I'm curious your thoughts on the um, how timely. I think about world events that happen. Some of those could be as simple as the Powerball jackpot gets to a new figure and it's, is creating a lot of buzz, to Bitcoin, to, some excitement or tragedy in the news. And so is there something to telling a story and having it be very timely in relationship to those things and getting picked up? Yeah, I'm curious your perspective on that. And then maybe if you want to touch on how much does it take from me? Like if I'm engaged with you and I'm like, Mickie, I'm excited about this process. How much does it take from me as the business owner or our team to interface with you and your team to get things out on a time frame that works in those scenarios? So.
Yeah. So with us, you can take a release that you've written and upload it to the website and schedule it for as quickly as next business day. Same day, there's an additional charge, but I don't recommend it because
Mhm,
uh, our newswire partners don't love those. Dropping everything for that. So,
mhm,
um, but if you're in a pinch, you can certainly do that. So it's as quick as that. And we offer writing services, but I tell people, you can use AI to help you write a press release. The great thing is it's not the end product, it's what you're writing for the journalist. And so if writing's not your forte, you can lean on AI to write a press release. Never ever let AI choose what to write about though. AI has been trained on the 97% of press releases that don't get picked up and don't
mhm,
generate earned media. And so you want to always go to AI, say, hey, here's some background information about me, my company, this new service, and
mhm,
I want the press release to be about this, like a product launch for this new service. And then you can have it write the release. Best results, don't let it write the whole release, but say, hey, it's great you just spit out a whole release in 2 seconds, but let's break this down. What would you say is the best outline for a press release like this? And then it'll give it to you and then say, okay, let's start with the headline. Give me 10 headline options. And then, okay, give me 3 opening paragraph options. And you make sure, is the most important elements in that headline that you chose and that paragraph. If not, go back and say, hey, I like this paragraph best, but we really need to get up here in this opening paragraph this element or this
mhm,
thing that's really important. And then if you just take it paragraph by paragraph, you're going to get a much better press release. Instead of 30 seconds, it's going to take you 10 minutes. But again, you're
mhm,
not having to write it. You're leaning on the AI to do that. The two areas to spend the most time on is the headline and the quote that you have in a press release. And what people don't realize is if you have a press release that is like a mid newsworthiness and there's another one out there that's equal, a journalist looks at both. If one has an amazing quote, they know, hey, I can write a good article for either of these. They're about the same newsworthiness. But
Hmm.
when it's done, this amazing quote is going to really make, land a punch in my article. So I'm going to gravitate to this one. And when I
Yeah.
say an amazing quote, I mean you've said something powerfully or, contrarian or controversial, or you've
Hmm.
said something with active verbs and you've condensed it and paraphrased it. So it's just a powerful sentence. And if
Yeah.
they were to, reword it, it wouldn't sound as good as yours. So make sure that the quote lands. So many quotes I see in press releases are safe, weak verbs. They look like they've been written by committee. And no journalist is ever going to say, wow, I want to make sure that quote is in the middle of my article. And
Yeah.
so spend some time there and go from there. As far as working for us, I said, you can lean on AI to write. I tell people, to spend time on really curating a creative idea for a press release, being
Hmm.
strategic. I feel like 90% of the magic of press releases gets picked up is choosing the right angle to focus on.
Yeah.
And the writing is the easiest part. And then it's a matter of just uploading it to our website and scheduling it. We have a new customer special. We also offer bundles here and there. You can do a proper PR campaign. And I always tell people, just like you wouldn't judge Google with 10 clicks, you don't want to judge a PR campaign with one press release. You want to commit to a campaign of 6 to 8 releases. Try as many strategic hooks as you can. And I always tell people if you follow my model of strategic releases and you do a campaign of 6 to 8, you will have releases that generate nothing. That is the
Yeah.
norm. But you should also have probably 2 or 3 of them that do generate earned media. And, hopefully one of those is a home run, just like that article in the Waste News that person
Yeah.
got and got millions of dollars. But, a lot of people get a lot of leads from these article pickups. They get a lot of attention from it. It helps your SEO. It helps, boost your conversion rate with existing leads, as well as, retains and keeps existing customers as well.
Mickie, this is all really fascinating. I'm curious. This arena of press releases is seems like it should be a piece to really build trust, like we've talked about, and credibility in the marketplace. We've talked about a lot of things. How do I engage with e-releases to help me do this? Because I think there's getting a press release put out into the world is great, but it's like I still need somebody to walk me through the process to do this at a high level.
Sure. So I tell people one of the easiest things to do is to start looking at the types of releases that are strategic and important. And to that, I have a free masterclass that I've set up where I walk you through it's a video less than an hour long and some
Mhm.
accompanying material where I swear at the end of that, you will know more than a lot of people who work in PR. It's available at ereleases.com/plan, PLAN. Also, you feel free to just go to our website, ereleases.com. We have chat, we have phone, we have email. You'll only talk to editors. We have no salespeople. There's no commissions or quotas. And we're pretty much straight shooters. And we also realize that a lot of people have never done a press release before or never done a press release that has been thoughtful and
Mhm.
strategic. And so feel free to lean on us. And, if you want us to look at something, we're willing to do that, whether you've signed up to use us yet or not.
Yeah.
And, there are also people who sometimes say, hey, Mickie, will you handle everything? And we do offer that as well. Just when you check in with one of the editors, let them know that you're looking for working
Mhm.
directly with Mickie. And, it's a higher level of service. But I'm not as expensive as the big giant PR firms. And
Sure.
I believe that my track record is way better than
Yeah.
most PR firms.
Sure. This is great. And one of the things that I was also thinking about, there's a statement that we try to consider in our marketing and sort of growth and development plan. And and it relates to this. Here's the statement. If our visibility outpaces our capability, it hurts our credibility. And I think about that in relationship to, like, if I ran a Super Bowl ad, and I had more phone calls than I knew what to do with, um, that would be bad. It would be bad for our business. And so, is there any? This would be a great problem to put out a PR release and have it just blow up in a fantastic way. But is there any concern about like, hey, I need to have a certain level of infrastructure in place before I start doing some of these pieces, or is it really more of a process that we need to, like you said, commit to over time, and eventually the work will come?
Yeah, I think it's one of the things that you just need to commit to, and if you do get busy as a result of it, you just dig in and lean in. But
Hmm.
it's those are so rare that I would say you just give it a try. Don't be scared of it. I've had someone who was the front page of USA Today's promoting a book, a novel that they had written. And novels are so hard to get pick up through a press release. I often advise people who have creatively written something to don't rely on a press release.
Hmm.
Nonfiction works really well because you're talking about the topic and why your topic that you chose to write about is different than everybody else's. But
Hmm.
novels and poetry is more about the writing and the style, and that's harder to get across in a press release. But
Hmm.
this person got, and they only got a few hundred sales of the book. And so, that it's amazing exposure that they got.
Hmm.
And that person was a little discouraged by it, but he had also mentioned to me that his local bookstore wouldn't let him do a book reading. And I said, you take that page and you go back to
Hmm.
that bookstore and you call me and let me know what they said about doing a book reading. He goes, you were
Yeah.
right. They
Yeah.
were impressed. It doesn't always necessarily result in, life-changing sales, but it usually is consistent. It gets the phone ringing. It gets things moving along. Even when we did the telecom and got all of that pickup initially, I bet we didn't sell more than a few hundred copies of that
Hmm.
book that we had of data. That being said, today the access to that data is over $20,000 a year, so it's expensive. But back then it was only $600 and for that book, and today it's all online. But I just say, put yourself out there. If something crazy happens and you have good staff and you have family and friends, you can dig in and deal with that situation.
Right.
I had one person who talked about where they had an explosion of sales, and they basically moved Thanksgiving to their garage so they could fulfill orders with the whole extended family. And
Yeah.
I told them, you need to include that in your next press release, and they did. And that was the opening anecdote they used in a 3-page Inc. magazine article about them and the growth of that company. And they were like, I don't know why they were interested in that. And I said, it's something that entrepreneurs go through. It's like you
Hmm.
can't always dictate how things go. And when you get overwhelmed, you dig in. And often entrepreneurs, it's something that everybody in the family and friends and everybody gets involved with because that's part of entrepreneurship.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fantastic. I see the value of PR fitting into we'll call it a global marketing strategy, that is taking into consideration everything from like, hey, we're creating our own content, and we could be putting that out there on our website, on our social, on YouTube, to like you outlined earlier with ads, like PRs, press releases are going to create a fantastic foundation for that, and the credibility factor is just through the roof with getting picked up. I think that's incredible, even if it doesn't generate any business, like you said with the author and going back to the bookstore. It's one of those things that says, hey, this is a real player in the game, and so I think that all of those pieces just start to fit together really nicely. And so I just want to point people to ereleases.com/plan. We'll have a link to that in the show notes. But that's really Mickey's masterclass in PR strategy. And I think that's really good. And, if you go there, you'll have access to all of the ways to get in touch with Mickie and his team. And they're happy to help walk you through these things. And when I think about the entrepreneur, when we start to ignore PR, you remain invisible. You're stuck relying on short-term marketing tactics to try to generate, you know, some of that credibility, and it just falls flat. And you're just going to continue to be overlooked by media. With the right PR strategy, the credibility. You can stand out in your industry. You can attract clients and opportunities that you never thought possible. So, Mickie, I appreciate all of your wisdom and guidance. Is there anything we should be talking about that we haven't covered in our conversation?
I think the big thing, a takeaway that people should have is a lot of people feel like, well, I'm not at the stage yet to matter to the media. And
Mhm.
what you have to realize is that journalists get the most accolades and the most shares of articles, which is a metric that they use for how successful an article is, when they are often spotlighting new companies or services or businesses no one knows about. And often these are the mom and pops, the new ventures, the ones that are so small that they're not on people's radar. Nobody, pats a journalist on the back when they've covered a new Microsoft Office update, but they have to because Microsoft is what Microsoft is. But
Mhm.
when they put, hey, there's a really cool tool that applies to the industry that I cover, and things like that, people get excited about that because it makes the journalist seem like a curator, and they're like, whoa, this person is so keyed into the
Mhm.
industry. And it also, people welcome new and refreshing takes on things, and little changes and exploits that are going on
Mhm.
within industries.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so good. And when I think about marketing in general, right? The goal is to get my message out in front of people, right? And I can do that through social media. I can do it through direct mail. I can do it with a billboard, right? And I think PR also falls into that category of like, this is a way to get my message out there, and it seems to just tie so nicely into a comprehensive strategy because it's so foundational in that credibility and trust piece. So this has been great, Mickie. I appreciate you. I'm actually looking forward to going through the masterclass that you've provided to us at ereleases.com/plan, and really just digging in and understanding PR to another level, and looking at what we can do to incorporate into our strategy. So thank you so much for all the wisdom and guidance today.
Very welcome.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of the Vital Wealth Strategies podcast. I hope you found a ton of value in today's conversation with Mickie Kennedy, and that it sparked some ideas about how you can start using PR to elevate your credibility, expand your reach, and grow your business with confidence. If this episode resonated with you, take a moment to share it with another entrepreneur who could benefit from these insights. And while you're at it, please leave a quick review. It really helps us reach more business owners who are ready to build wealth strategically and live life with purpose. And don't forget, if you're ready to start building out your own personalized tax and wealth strategy, visit vitalstrategies.com/tax. That's vitalstrategies.com/tax. Your next step towards keeping more of what you earn and building lasting financial freedom. And remember, you're a vital entrepreneur. You're vital because you're the backbone of our economy, creating opportunities, driving growth, and making an impact. You're vital to your family, creating abundance in every aspect of life. And you're vital to me because you're committed to growing your wealth, leading with purpose, and creating something truly great. Thank you for being a part of this incredible community of vital entrepreneurs. I appreciate you, and I look forward to having you back here next time on the Vital Wealth Strategies podcast, where we help entrepreneurs minimize their taxes, master wealth, and optimize their lives.